In the last decade, the number of people living without access to electricity has almost halved. Countries are abandoning plans to build new coal plants that they don't need. Since the Paris Agreement, the global coal pipeline has collapsed by 3/4. This year, the No New Coal Power Compact was launched, led by Sri Lanka and Chile, along with 5 other countries. Pakistan, the Philippines, and Malaysia have all announced that they are stopping the building of new coal plants, and the Asia Climate Vulnerable Forum has expressed its support for this position. This year has also seen commitments from the G7, the Republic of Korea, and China to end international financing for new coal power. Together with this growing political momentum, the economics of the power sector have continued to shift. Smarter, greener grids are enabling higher shares of renewables, and it is increasingly becoming cheaper to install new renewables rather than continue to operate existing coal plants. The Asian Development Bank has created the first ever financing facility to support countries in realizing this opportunity by retiring their coal plants early. The coalition of countries committed to fully phasing out coal power continues to grow. This year, the Powering Past Coal Alliance grew to 41 countries, including Spain, North Macedonia, and Hungary. And it's not just countries doing their part. 235 energy companies have now joined the race to zero. 14 utilities are members of the Powering Past Coal Alliance, along with over 20 financial institutions, creating a growing list of investors committed to phasing out coal from their portfolios. The Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet joins philanthropies, public and private sectors to help ensure the benefits of clean energy access are truly universal. With the creation of the Energy Transition Council, the political, financial, and technological leaders of the global power sector have come together to make sure that for every country considering new power generation, clean power is the most attractive option, and to ensure that countries stepping out on the journey to make a just and inclusive energy transition away from coal enjoy the strong support of the international community. There are still challenges to be overcome on the way to making clean power accessible to all, and to kicking out coal, the dirtiest fossil fuel, from the global power sector. But this year, a tipping point has been passed. The transition is gathering pace. We are moving irreversibly to clean power for all, and we are consigning coal to history.
Hey, do you have a minute? Let's talk about the climate. Welcome to Klima Minute, where we give you beat-by-beat updates of what's up and what's happening here in Glasgow, Scotland for the United Nations Climate Change Conference. Klima Minute is brought to you by Living Laudato Si, Action Klima, and AYEJ. My name is Val Vestile, and I'm your host. Everyone has goals, right? Relationship goals, squad goals, family goals, career goals, even personal goals. And it's no different here in COP26. When you organize a conference as big as this, with global leaders coming under one roof, you have to have goals, right? Well, they have identified 4 specific goals here at COP26 that they hope to achieve by the end of the forum. Let's talk about them one by one. And one of them is actually right behind me. The first goal is to secure global net zero by mid-century and keep 1.5 degrees within reach. This is actually the bulk of what's happening at the negotiation tables, where countries are being asked to come forward with very ambitious emission reduction targets. And how can countries do this? Number 1, countries will need to accelerate the phase out of coal. Say no to coal. Number 2, countries need to curtail deforestation. Number 3, countries need to speed up the switch to electric vehicles. And number 4, countries need to encourage investment in renewables. The second goal is adaptation. Countries need to work together to protect and restore ecosystems, as well as build defenses and resilient infrastructure to prevent the loss of livelihood. Number 3, mobilize finance. Developed and rich countries need to make good on their promise to mobilize at least $100 billion in climate finance for countries that need it the most, especially the Philippines. The final goal, and probably my favorite, is work together to deliver. This means we need to finalize the Paris rulebook and collaborate as governments, business, and civil society organizations to tackle the climate action.
A better future is built by the brave, envisioned by brilliant minds, born from the passions of thousands strong. One that isn't without risk, but protected from it. Safe from all the worries and secure for what's to come. Because a better future with the greatest empires, the strongest communities, and the happiest families will always be worth having. That's why the bold and the fearless understand that recreating something better takes courage and strength. So together, let's start shaping a better future today.
Good afternoon, mayors, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our 20th Livable Cities Lab, presented by the Livable Cities Challenge Philippines, together with the League of Cities of the Philippines and Globe Telecom. Today's special event is the first in a series called Sustainable Future, organized in partnership with the British Embassy Manila. This partnership is timely because since all eyes are in Glasgow for the UN Climate Change Conference, or COP26. This year's climate summit aims to secure global net zero targets by 2050, keeping 1.5 degrees Celsius change within reach, urgently adapting to protect communities and natural habitats, mobilizing finance, and working together to respond to the climate crisis. In the first week, countries have already pledged to reverse deforestation, phase out coal, and reduce methane emissions by 30% before 2030. For the Philippines, we live in a climate-defined future. The Philippines accounts for just 0.3% of total greenhouse gas emissions, but faces large consequences from climate change in the form of severe typhoons, floods, and drought. At COP26, the Philippines has committed to reduce GHG emissions by 75% by 2030, implement both climate mitigation and adaptation projects, launched a sustainable finance roadmap to fund green projects, and accelerate a shift from coal to clean energy and renewable energy projects. Today's lab is all about renewable energies, repowering cities of the future by transitioning to renewable energy. And we will explore lessons and best practices to help us meet our goals. We will zero in on the renewable energy transition in the Philippine power sector, as this contributes around half of our national GHG emissions. We are pleased to have with us experts and key industry players to help us for today's discussion. Director Mylene Capongco from the Department of Energy, Jose Maria Zabaleta from AC Energy, Quintin Pastrana of Winergy Power Pilipinas, Attorney Jay Layog of the Developers of Renewable Energy for Advancement, or DREAM, Anthony Coveney of Thomas Lloyd Group, and Philip Napier Moore of Mott MacDonald Limited. Our moderator will once again be Sui Suarez from Aboitiz Power. He is one of our co-founders and core team members of the Livable Cities Challenge, and an energy industry professional with 25 years of experience in communications, corporate social responsibility, and project management at Shell. He was a member of the Shell Scenario Reports on the global economy and environment. But before I turn over to Sui, let me first welcome our special guest today. It is my honor and great pleasure to introduce the new British ambassador to the Philippines, Laura Bofis. Prior to her Philippine posting, she was the FCDO Director for Development for Jordan, Iraq, and Palestine from August 2019. She was Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria and Head of Mission to Lagos, responsible for leading the British government's engagement with Nigeria on trade, climate, among other things. From 2014 to 2017, she served as the head of the UK Department of International Development in Rwanda and in Burundi. And prior to joining the UK civil service, she worked with the UN and civil society organizations and the private sector as a financial auditor. Unfortunately, Ambassador Bofis is currently traveling, so she can't be with us live today, but she has graciously prepared a video recording for this very important webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce uh, Ambassador Laura Bofis delivering her keynote message.
Good afternoon and magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. I am delighted to join so many of you today in the kickoff of this seminar series that will promote sustainability and partnerships in key infrastructure sectors. The British Embassy is proud to be partnering with Livable Cities Challenge to make this happen. There could, of course, be no better time for us to launch this project. As we speak, the COP26 climate conference, chaired by the UK government and attended by 120 global leaders, is taking place in Glasgow. And in the last week, we have seen more and more governments put forward net zero targets, clear tangible actions to achieve the goal of keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees. And more countries are contributing significant finance to enable the transition to low carbon and climate resilient development. Also, over 40 world leaders have backed up and signed up to the new breakthrough agenda that includes the US, India, EU, and China, representing more than 70% of the world's economy and every region. This agenda will see countries and businesses work together to dramatically scale up and speed up the development and deployment of clean technologies and to drive down their costs this very decade. The aim is to make clean technologies the most affordable, accessible, and attractive choice for all in the most polluting sectors by 2030. This will be particularly supporting the developing world to access the innovation and tools needed for a just transition to net zero and clean infrastructure. The benefits of this agenda go beyond tackling climate change alone. Our ambition is to catalyze the growth of markets, jobs, and economic development globally for clean technologies and sustainable solutions to support the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to strengthen the climate resilience of our societies, and to realize multiple co-benefits such as cleaner air, water, and better health. Net zero, clean infrastructure. Most of you in the audience are experts in this field and know better than anyone how we can realistically achieve these ambitions. I know that the businesses and organizations you represent agree. The transition to clean and renewable energy sources, such as geothermal, hydro, wind, and solar, which are already abundant in the Philippines, will help end the dependence on the expensive imported fuel and lower electricity costs, especially for lower income, climate vulnerable Filipino families. The UK is not only leading the talk on this, we are walking the talk by being the fastest among G20 countries to decarbonize our economy and the first to put into law net zero carbon emission targets by 2050. We are also doubling our international climate finance assistance to developing nations with £11.6 billion pledged by 2025. And we are spending at least $3 billion of this on nature and nature-based solutions in the next 5 years. In the Philippines specifically, I am proud of the significant milestones that our programs have delivered. Under our ASEAN Low Carbon Energy Program, only just a few weeks ago, we supported the launch of the Sustainable Finance Roadmap, a fruit of our partnership with the Interagency Task Force for Sustainable Finance, or the Green Force, spearheaded by the Department of Finance and the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. This roadmap will enable the channeling of capital and investments towards green activities. Additionally, our Global Future Cities program is pioneering the adoption of nature-based solutions and green city development strategies to support the preservation of the country's biodiversity and improve urban resilience to climate-induced disasters. For example, in New Clog City, we are designing the largest public green space to be built in the country for over half a century. This infrastructure project serves not only as a critical flood mitigation infrastructure, but also sets the standard for green and disaster-resilient open spaces that directly promote sustainable transportation, energy efficiency, and biodiversity protection. In Cebu City, the housing and city development strategies are central to the comprehensive land use plan that will phase out informal settlements in dangerous and climate-vulnerable coastal areas and regenerate waterfront development, economic hubs, and major transport arteries. This will help the city build back better. As we celebrate our 75 years of diplomatic ties with the Philippines, the UK remains steadfast in its commitment to work side by side with the Philippines on these initiatives. I look forward to working with all of you, our partners and our allies, to continue to expand on future opportunities towards a cleaner, greener, more sustainable future for all of us. Maraming salamat and mabuhay.
Thank you, Ambassador Laura Bofis, for that very inspiring and also very information-filled keynote message. And thank you, Bill, earlier on for the kind introduction. And welcome everyone to the 20th Livable Cities webinar on Repowering Cities of the Future, Transitioning to Renewable Energy. Before we begin, let's review a few safety reminders. First, be aware of your surroundings while the webinar is ongoing, in case you need to stop due to an emergency. And second, please always stay safe and practice social distancing if you are out of your home. Furthermore, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you on the Livable Cities Facebook page. Questions may be asked in the Zoom Q&A chat box, which includes a feature that allows the audience to vote on questions posted by others by simply clicking on the thumbs up button next to the question. Some of these questions will be answered directly by our speakers or their staff in the chat box, while others may be answered directly by our speakers during the open forum. If you are joining our webinar on Facebook Live, you may place your questions in the comments section of Facebook. And at the end of the webinar, we all invite you to please fill up our feedback survey. Your response will help us improve our Livable Cities Lab series, and you may also get a certificate of participation by answering the corresponding question in the survey. As I look into our Zoom window, we have almost 140 people in Zoom joining us, and a few more in Facebook Live. So welcome and thank you all for spending your afternoon with us in the Livable Cities Lab, our 20th Livable Cities Lab. To get our program going, we'd like to ask you, our audience, a couple of poll questions. And let's see, our first poll question will be put up on screen now. And it says, where are you joining us from? So if you can choose kung nasaan kayo ngayong araw, where are you joining us from? You can click one of these four buttons, either in Metro Manila, rest of Luzon, Visayas, or Mindanao. And let us see where is everybody this afternoon. Okay. Tingnan natin. Aha. Oh my goodness. We have about almost half are in Metro Manila and a quarter in the rest of Luzon, and then the rest are in Visayas and Mindanao. So thank you for answering that question. But before we go on, may isa pa. There's one more poll question I would like to ask you, and this is related to our topic this afternoon. How much of the Philippines installed power generation capacity is contributed by renewable energy. Okay? So how much of the power generation capacity ng Pilipinas is renewable energy? So the choices are 9%, 19%, 29%, or 36%, about 1/3. So tingnan natin kung we can see what is the answer of our audience. Okay, let's go. It says here 38% says 9%, 31%, 19%, 29%, ang sumagot doon ay 22%. So ang majority says about 9%. And we'll find out the answer to this question mamaya, because at least one, or I bet about two of our panelists, our speakers, will talk about this particular statistic. Okay, so let's kick off today's webinar by introducing our first speaker, and she is Director Mylene Kapungkol. So Director Kapungkol is from the Renewable Energy Management Bureau, or the REMB, at the Department of Energy. Established under RA 9513, or the Renewable Energy Act of 2008, the REMB is tasked to implement policies, plans, and programs related to the accelerated development, transformation, utilization, and commercialization of renewable energy resources and technologies. It is also in charge of the promotion of the commercialization and application of renewable energy resources, including new and emerging technologies for efficient and economical transformation, conversion, processing, marketing, and distribution to end users. So to discuss this afternoon the government's plans and programs on renewable energy, let us welcome Director Mylene Kapungkol. Hello, Director. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Magandang hapon. Yes.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Good. I turn over the virtual stage to you, Direct.
Thank you, Suis. Yes. Okay. Does my slide seen on the screen?
Yes, it's on screen now. Thank you.
How about do you hear me clearly, everyone?
I can hear you and see you very well on screen then, Director.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Again, good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of the Department of Energy, it is our pleasure to present to you our renewable energy plans and programs. So I will, given the time, I'll skip some of the slides maybe, but we'll delve on some of the important slides that I need to discuss later. So the presentation this afternoon will cover the status of the renewable energy in the country as of December 2020. And I'll give you the overview of the various renewable energy plans and programs, and the trust or the visions that we are looking at by 2030 and beyond. So let me start by the first part of my presentation as to the statistic of as to where we are right now. So as you may know that the country is blessed with a lot of potential resources that can be tapped and used by the country, bring it together to our self-reliance and self-sufficiency. So Renewable Energy Act of 1995 is anchored on the accelerated development and exploration of this potential renewable or indigenous resources in the country. And of course, given that it's already here, we do not need to import fuels. Our self-reliance and self-sufficiency, of course, is enhanced. And of course, we mitigate the effect of climate change. We did a study in 2017, and it can be shown that most part of the countries will be volatile or will be exposed to high water level or rising of the sea level. So that's very alarming for most of us. Now, earlier on, Sir Swiss has a question on the capacity of renewable energy in the country? Well, the response is, or the answer is actually, as of December 2020, renewable energy is 29% of the total installed generating capacity of the country, with a total capacity of about 26,250 megawatt. Now, in terms of power generation, so this is the megawatt or the kilowatt hour. Renewable energy actually is 21%. And actually, this is lower when we started renewable energy act or law. During that time in 2008, the share of RE is about 34%. And this is where we are looking at reverting back our share of renewable energy later on the programs of having it at 30% RE share in the power generation mix by 2030. The next slide would show you the highlights of the implementation of the National Renewable Energy Plans and Program, which was issued in 2011. So from 2011 up to 2020, you can see that there have been a lot of policies, initiatives, programs, strategies that we were able to develop and promulgate. But this is not enough. There are still a lot of improvement, a lot of new policies, emerging ones, and that will support renewable energy development in the country. And with the full implementation of all the policies, mechanism that are introduced in the Renewable Energy Act, as well as the complementary or supplementary policy that the DOE has been doing, will be able to meet our goal of self-sufficiency and have a cleaner energy. Next slide will show you the status of the various plans and programs we have on the renewable energy. First, so this is encapsulated in 2 slides. For the feed-in tariff, you may recall that we have came up with around 1,400 megawatt of installation target to comprise the feed-in tariff system. And most of them are already completed except for the run of river hydro, which as of the latest, we have around 102 under unsubscribed capacity. But there are a lot of ongoing hydro projects that are vying for the feed-in tariff. So there's no sunset date or there's no deadline for completion. So this is a policy that the Department of Energy has issued in response to the difficulties actually of installing or building run-of-river hydro. No? Most of them are in far-flung areas of the country. Next is the net metering. So it's ongoing. There's about 38 megawatt of net metering capacities coming from around 4,000 customers from 60 distribution utilities. So in the coming days, the Department of Energy will be expanding the application of the net metering even in the off-grid areas or those areas that are not connected in the main transmission line. And we will be coming up also with what we call guidebook that will help the stakeholders and the practitioners on what are the necessary policies, programs, and guidelines they have to follow or to know in participating in the net metering program. Next is the renewable energy portfolio standards for on-grid. So you may recall that we have already implemented it, and the compliance year actually is 2020, but the effectivity is about 2018. So this gave the Department of Energy or the mandated participants at least 2 years to bank all the eligible RE certificates. No? So this was actually designed by the National Renewable Energy Board headed by then our Undersecretary Jay Layug. And for the RPS off-grid, actually we already issued the circular, but we have identified several implementation strategies that may result to possible stranded contract cost and stranded assets. So we're carefully reviewing the implementation guidelines, policies, and hopefully the regulation will be coming in soonest. For the Green Energy Option Program, we all know that the ERC has already issued its rules on the Green Energy Option framework, and there's, I think, a transitory provision that would allow other market player to prepare for the full implementations of the Green Energy Option Program. But on the part of the Department of Energy, we already issued and we are continuously issuing JOP operating permits so that our RE developers would be able to market immediately their products, which is electricity generation coming from renewable energy. And for the renewable energy market, this is a venue where trading of RE certificate will happen. And this will support the implementation of the renewable energy standards, no, both for on-grid and off-grid. And currently, right now, we are doing the readiness criteria, the evaluation that are being submitted by the RE registrar, which is currently the Philippine Electricity Market Corporation. And in the coming days, maybe next week, we will be conducting a public consultation on the possible interim commercial operation of the RE market. No, when we say interim, it's just like a test run without any financial transaction coming from all the parties or the stakeholders of the RE market. Next slide would be the trust fund. So, given the the pandemic, there are some difficulties securing the remittances coming from those who will contribute. But the Department of Energy has drafted several guidelines on the administration and establishing the trust fund. On the CRES, this is actually the competitive RE zone. This is supported by USAID and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. So we did already completed phase 1, which identified 35 RE zones and totaling about 35 megawatt of potential wind and solar. So excluding other renewable energy resources. So right now, phase 2 is currently ongoing. Activity 1 refers to the implementation, meaning we will put into fruition the promotion and possible private sector looking into the implementation of the 35 CRES areas. And activity 2 and 3 talks about the long-term planning scenario as well as on the ancillary services or the energy storage system for the country. It's part of the enhancement. And then, as mentioned earlier, the enhanced net metering will be issued or will be implemented anytime soon. As to the waste to energy development, you may recall that we conducted a public consultation on the proposed draft waste to energy policy, and this would put premium to the waste to energy development in the country, particularly increasing the attributes of waste to energy generation under the RPS, no? And it's a priority purchase for the mandated participants. Now, for the Green Energy Auction Program, the Green Energy Auction Program actually is similar to a FIT, but the difference is the price is identified or determined through auction or competitive way. It's not ERC who is determining the FIT rate. So we're happy to tell that The revised policy has been signed and is up for publication, and soon enough, we will be doing the rollout of the green energy auction program anytime soon. Now, with the support also of UK Embassy under the LSEP program, as well as the World Bank Group, the Department of Energy were able to secure a series of webinar capacity building from the UK government. And the World Bank is helping us to develop an offshore wind development roadmap. Now, we're also working on establishing what we call the joint industry platform. It's like a small or a big brother tandem wherein several professional and experienced companies will be helping our developers and the Department of Energy and even the Energy Regulatory Commission and other government agencies like PPA and the Marina in understanding how offshore wind is being developed and operated in the country. And as part of implementing the RPS and meeting the target goal of 35% RE share in the power generation mix by 2030 and around 50% by 2040, we will be increasing the minimum RPS requirement for the mandated participants. By the way, when we say mandated participants, these are industry participants that are required to blend in renewable energy in their supply to the customer. So from 1%, we are now working towards increasing it to 2.52%. But don't worry, annually the Department of Energy, the National Renewable Energy Board, and the RPS composite team created by the Department of Energy is constantly monitoring the movement of this RPS compliance. Now, where we are headed, of course, as espoused under our proposed National Renewable Energy Program for 2020 to 2040, which will soon be released, no? We are targeting 35% RE share by 2030 and 50% by 2040. And the objective is, of course, to attain energy security, contribute to the sustainable development goals, and of course, mitigate climate change, provide capacity building, and increase the local content as far as the capacity of our players are concerned. And lastly, right now, the Department of Energy has several innovative programs, like we're now looking at hydrogen and fusion and other technologies, offshore wind, as mentioned, and then the marine or the tidal energy. We are also working on what we call expanded solar rooftop program, wherein there are a lot of mechanism in which an RE developer can partner with household members or even commercial buildings to contribute in the development of the needed capacities, no, particularly during summer. We all know that every May we're having some difficulties or shortfall as far as capacity is concerned. And of course, as mentioned earlier, we are on currently drafting the policy for geothermal energy. Geothermal energy, we wanted to revert back to our original position of number 2. And the same with the waste to energy technology, we are putting premium on the geothermal energy development in the country. And actually through the finance technical assistance and or FTAA, foreign entities can participate in geothermal energy development. And of course, with the waste to energy policy, we will be able to enhance the solid waste management in the country. So all in all, that is the program of the Department of Energy. I will not prolong it anymore. I'll be happy to respond later. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Mylene, for that very, very comprehensive presentation. Napakadaming points that I'm sure our audience will be quite interested in. And I understand we have a question or two already in the Q&A chat box. So thank you for that. Our next presenter, we'd like to call on Mr. Jose Maria Sech Zabaleta. So he's currently the Chief Development Officer of AC Energy Corporation, and he leads the company's development arm, ACE Endeavor, with over 3,000 megawatts of generation capacity under active development and around 500 megawatts of generation capacity constantly under construction. He's also the chairman of AC Energy's operating renewable subsidiaries and partnerships in the Philippines. Previously, Sech was co-founder and chief executive officer of Bronze Oak Philippines, a pioneer and leader in clean technology energy development in the Philippines. To speak to us today on driving the renewables revolution, let us welcome Sech Zabaleta. Hello, Sech. How are you? And good afternoon.
Hi, Sui. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see your
Chairman.
slides are up and we can see and hear you well, so I leave you to it.
Thank you very much. Director Mylene, Bill, Sui, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for the time today, giving us the time to speak. Let me get the slides under control. There we go. Okay, so as most of you know, Ayala Corporation has been around a long time, over 165 years. And in recent years, AC Energy has been growing, and we're very proud to this year have become the fourth pillar in the Ayala Group. This year we've celebrated our 10th anniversary. The company started in 2011 when the market conditions were such that our chairman and shareholders saw it as an opportune time to enter into the sector. The economy was growing very strongly at the time. There were power shortages looming, and we were seeing robust liquidity in financial markets, reducing cost of capital, and we thought the conditions were right. And in the years thereafter, the company was fortunate enough to find good partnerships and be quite successful in going from 0 to 1,000 megawatts in 5 years. It was considered a great success, and a basis to continue on that trajectory. However, having said that, there was a review of what had been achieved, accomplished. There was certainly a lot of pride in the fact that the company had a role in helping give birth to the RE sector, having been involved both in wind with NLR together with UPC, and also in solar together with Bronze Oak in Montesol. But also in enabling a lot of the coal capacity at the time, which was needed to keep up with demand through what were very fast-growing years in the economy and in demand. However, in 2016, there was a review of what had been achieved, and rather than continue as business as usual, there was a very, very significant and dramatic strategic pivot by the company in deciding to now move away from thermal opportunities and in fact begin a process of divesting from them and to dramatically scale up renewables. At the same time, the company was bold enough to leverage its success in the Philippines and go international, and that began in late 2016 with the successful acquisition and investment into the geothermal assets of Chevron in Indonesia, and that began a very active period of growth and expansion across the region for AC Energy. And to enable all of that, it was important for the company to have a platform to do this. Prior to 2016, AC Energy was really a financial and investment and asset management company in the power sector. But that decision was made in 2016 to take on a platform to be able to internally develop projects, specifically and especially in the renewable sector, and grow from there. And as Sui mentioned, that's the step that brought me into the company. So AC Energy acquired Bronze Oak at the end of 2016, and since 2017, we're very now happy and proud to be a part of the growth of AC Energy. Since 2016, you can see the significant growth we've had in the RE space. We've have a declining capacity in the thermal space, and very happy to see that we're now at almost 3,000 megawatts of renewables. In the Philippines, this slide is a little bit dated. We're now at just over about 1,800 megawatts in total, of which a little bit, about 1,250 is in renewables. And I'll talk a little bit more later on about our most recent projects. But we're very committed to continuing the shift and growth of renewables. We think that they play an important role in supporting the government targets, objectives that Director Mylene has been talking about. But we also think that it's very well suited to the demand profile of the country and what we need in terms of when we need it. Solar in particular is very well matched to the demand profile. We also continue to track and stay involved in the development of new technologies, among them energy storage, which is one that we have already plunged into. And these past couple of weeks, we've been commissioning our first storage plant. And in fact, next week, we'll begin the first hybrid solar storage operation, which I'll also discuss a little bit more later on. What's wrong with this slide? There we go. Internationally, as mentioned, we have geothermal assets operating in Indonesia. We also then expanded into wind in Indonesia and invested in the first wind farm there, 75 megawatts. And very soon after that, expanded into Vietnam, initially in the solar sector, finishing about 500 megawatts of solar power in 2019. And then immediately upon completion of that, expanded into wind, and we've just finished another approximately 500 megawatts of wind in Vietnam. At the same time in India, we show here 2 projects with a third one just about to start, adding another 280 megawatts or so of solar in India to our portfolio. And finally, in Australia, we're under construction on what is not just our largest, but the country's largest solar farm at 520 megawatts, just north of Sydney in Australia. At the moment, we have, Sui mentioned 3,000 megawatts in development in the Philippines. That's been significantly increased just in recent months through both internal growth as well as some acquisitions that have been recently announced. We're now exceed 6,000 megawatts of pipeline in the Philippines, eclipsed only by our pipeline in Australia, where we have a little over 8,000, and all told, as you can see here, about 18,000 megawatts across almost all technologies in the renewable space. And all of this really is in support of AC Energy's vision and objective of becoming the largest listed renewables platform in Southeast Asia. And we believe that we are well on the way to achieving that target of 5,000 megawatts by 2025. More recently, not only AC Energy, but the entire Ayala Group has embraced the vision that are shared by many, and has committed to net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Key milestones for the company itself is to transition its entire generation portfolio to 100% renewables by 2025. And yes, that means spinning off all its thermal capacity by that year. And finally, and importantly, is also not just divesting, but actually working towards the early retirement and transition of the SL Tech coal plant in Calaca, Batangas by 2040, or 15 years earlier than the end of its technical life. Here we have a project to share with everyone that brings together a lot of the components of sustainability that drives a lot of our projects. This is a 120 megawatt solar farm in Laguna, in Alaminos, Laguna, very close to Los Baños and Calamba. You can't quite see it here in the photo. Well, you maybe see a little bit on the top right, but TR4, or the extension of South Luzon Expressway, goes right by this property. And so when the South Luzon Expressway is completed, everyone will be able to see this plant just driving by it. And we're very happy with everything that not just AC Energy, but the Ayala Group has been able to do together here. Ayala Land has embarked on establishing a carbon forest all around the solar farm, and in fact has taken the offtake, a 25-year supply agreement to supply many of the Ayala Land malls around both Manila and Luzon coming from this plant. During the construction of the plant, we had a plastic waste recycling facility to build eco bricks from the plastic waste of the plant and use that in our construction and help with homes, and then provided many other benefits to the community while it was under construction, and now that's in an operation. And at the bottom right of the photo, you can see what is AC Energy's first energy storage facility. This is a battery storage facility, 40 megawatts, which will begin operation in the coming days and be working in tandem with the solar plant. Just a little bit of a summary of what I was saying about that facility. And then looking ahead in terms of what's to come, a few months ago, we also announced start of construction, what will be the largest wind farm in the Philippines. It will be completed by the end of next year, about this time, so 12 months from now. We'll begin commissioning actually in October of 2022. It's comprised of 32 5-megawatt turbines each. And then finally, another good example of what we've been working towards, both the wind farm I just talked about and this one here, which was just announced this week, 283 megawatts, megawatt solar farm, phase one, 283 megawatts, initially expected to surpass 500 megawatts at this site. Both of them take the scale of our projects up a significant step, which importantly allows us to reduce costs, because at the end of the day, that's what we're working towards, to reduce costs for the consumer, both for the price as generated, but also to be able to link that with energy storage as those costs come down, and working in tandem as a hybrid, be able to begin to supply solar and wind-based power, not just as it's generated when the wind is blowing or the sun is shining, but through other times of the day, and especially very much the evening peak hours when we need it most, especially in the coming years as potential supply issues may come up as we start to see aging plants, but also continued significant growth of the economy and increase in demand. So this plant began construction initially on access infrastructure a couple of months ago, and then went into full construction last week. And we're very excited, looking forward to its completion in early 2023, just before the summer season. So that's gives, I think, a flavor of the kinds of projects we're working on. I think I hope also gives everyone a good idea of the transition that AC Energy is committed to and trying to drive away from thermal as fossil fuels and really work with the DOE and the entire industry and sector in the country to get us to achieve the targets that the country has set and we've all set for ourselves, and very much, I think, in consistent with the livable cities objectives. Thank you very much, and happy to take any questions later on.
Thank you, Sech. And really impressive numbers you mentioned there. 18,000 megawatts in global capacity, 6,000 megawatts in the pipeline in the Philippines. So thank you for sharing that. And in case, I bet there'll be plenty of questions to you and also to Director Mylene. And again, we invite the audience to put the questions in the Q&A chat box in Zoom and also in the comment section of Facebook. So thank you, Sech.
Thank you, Sui.
Okay, our next speaker is Quintin Pastrana. Quintin, are you there? Aha, good. So Quintin is the president of Winergy Power Pilipinas, the head of international business development for Winergy Global, and he also leads its operating units in the Philippines. Quintin is the founder and chair of the award-winning Library Renewal Partnership. He's also the business anchor at ABS-CBN News Channel and a former anchor of Bloomberg TV Philippines. Quintin graduated with degrees in business, international relations, and creative writing from the universities of Georgetown, Cambridge, and Oxford. He is an Asia 21 Fellow of the Asia Society and was named among the US ASEAN Business Council's Young Leaders. So to present his talk it's entitled Small is Sustainable and Off-Grid is Good, Microgrids Here, There, and Everywhere. Let us welcome Quintin Pastrana. Hey Q, kumusta?
Hi, Sui. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Her Excellency, Bill, Director Mylene, our colleagues from the industry, thank you very much for the time and I appreciate the introduction. I'm going to share my screen now.
Okay, go ahead.
Q&A, but the title really borrows from E.F. Schumacher, the British economist, from Gordon Gekko, and from the Beatles. But this melange of topics is really what I wanted to talk about. That as a counterpoint to the larger scale generation, which is very, very important and critical to move the needle. We live in an archipelago, and in other areas where we're invested in, like Indonesia and Myanmar, and even Papua New Guinea, which is our latest projects. I mean, we are really looking at last mile delivery integrated solutions. And what it is we've assembled a group together that has actually provided the kind of investment and technology that's needed. I run the operating companies in the Philippines, mainly with our operating assets in Palawan and our solar and PV rooftop assets and our business expansion. But essentially, Winergy is a combination of a Dutch-based firm with our Japanese partners. So think of it as the best of Europe and Asia with Philippine capital and ingenuity. And I'm quite happy to share that we are building on that track record now. We're a very young company, but we like to complement the bigger guys by talking about where the last mile delivery solution is, where it is seemingly uneconomic to do, but where the vulnerable communities are. And we are basically extending our footprints to where these vulnerable communities really are located. And you're looking at Myanmar right now, and before the junta, we already had investments and projects in the Irrawaddy Delta, where it's quite critical there for their ecosystems and for their fishing industries. In Thailand, we've started with a project, an innovative project with the Thai International Airport, with Laos in helping them improve the capacity of their dams. In Vietnam with both their solar and microgrids, and Cambodia with similar run-of-river type solutions using Dutch microturbines. Indonesia, we're doing the same thing as we're doing in the Philippines, although they have 2.5 times the number of islands that we do. So at the end of the day, this is going to be an interesting collaboration by looking at what we've done in the Philippines and the different parts of the country and seeing how that translates with our southerly neighbor, our most kinful neighbor, so to speak. And then places like Rwanda and Papua New Guinea. So, we're a small company, but the idea there is we're going to be going where we're welcome, where the regulatory framework is quite benign and very encouraging, and where it's most needed, where we can really contribute to the sustainable development goals. Just a brief introduction. We do have our solar PV capacity. We're quite happy to build in that business. Everything from agribusiness with the Bounty Agro Group. So Chooks to Go is now Renewable Energy powered. St. Louis University in Baguio, Tuguegarao, Cebu, La Union, and FEU, our other client, and really a growing portfolio of institutions that are leading the way in terms of showing that we are able to depend less on the utilities and more on ourselves, on in God's given power. And more importantly, these are beacons where you can actually replicate this across the different areas. And I understand that 60% of the audience today are from local governments, and this is something that we're also expanding now into with proposals and then negotiations ongoing right now with the governments of Ilocos, Pasig, and Quezon City, those that are able to extrapolate a vision that they can actually put solar on their rooftops and reduce their carbon footprint for their constituents. This is a slide that I want to share with you that shows why you really do need these last mile delivery solutions. To your left is really a very ambitious plan, and I've taken this from the Competitive Renewable Economic Zone study of USAID, which also Director Mylene's team has done. Very ambitious, and if you see on your left the dotted lines, and you'll see most of these are dotted lines, that is basically how to get renewable energy transmitted to areas where they're needed the most. And you see this long dotted line in Palawan on your lower left, around Mindanao, Northern Luzon, and Eastern Visayas. A lot of these plans require a lot of capital. And with the Philippine debt portfolio right now, and I suppose issues that NGCP is trying to handle with its own private capacity and public sources, how will we get this transmission going? And in the meantime, while we're waiting for these massive investments to be done, whether it be submarine cables or spur lines from different utilities or takeovers of different electric cooperatives that are being seen right now. In the meantime, on the right side, if you look at it, not everything is hunky-dory. You look at the colors from green to red, and basically as soon as it turns yellow, orange, and red, you are in a conflict zone. This is where basically poverty is high, climate change and geophysical risk is high. There's a lot of issues with regard to insurgencies. That becomes a deterrent to development, but it's also a a cat and mouse game, or a what's this, cart versus the horse game there, where can we put energy solutions immediately before the transmission line is there so that we can empower and catalyze these communities that are very vulnerable. And many of our friends here in the audience are feeling that, wherein their brownouts are happening 3 to 4 times either daily or every other day, and nobody can put up cold storage for their fisheries. Nobody can put up farm to market processing that can improve the agriculture sector, which is very, very, very much needed for a pandemic resilience and recovery. How will we catalyze growth if there is no clean, reliable, and affordable energy in these remote areas where the transmission line or large plants cannot host or accommodate stranded capacity? So that's really the dilemma here that we're trying to solve as a company that has gone beyond large-scale generation to the smaller decentralized systems. And that really is the essence of this. And when you talk about livable cities, We're also talking about communities that have the ambition to become livable cities, to become first-class municipalities from where they are, which is third, fourth, or fifth-class municipalities, into viable cities that can take care of their own constituents. And the way we've designed our technology and our capital is we are going to invest in areas that can empower themselves. So rather than just having one zone or one village, like in the Netherlands, where our headquarters are, where you actually depend on the grid, these communities in Europe or Japan, thanks to the regulations and investment, are actually producing their own power and exporting them to other communities or the grid themselves. That's a future that we can all believe in. And I understand Director Mylene's plans under the REMB are there, and hopefully also her counterpart, Director Mario Marasigan, will also follow suit and get those enabling regulations there so that we can build more microgrids across the country that rely less on the main grid, especially in an archipelagic country like the Philippines, where instead of 7,109 Miss Universe answer questions come up, where I think up to 7,500 now with the latest discoveries from our scientists. So that's going to be a lot of communities that are not connected that we need to connect. Now, I want to talk about renewables just very briefly. I know many of you already are familiar with this, but really, in summary, what you are looking at is God's gift, trying to look at how to harness that and channel that on your rooftops. And every time I see a rooftop, I don't see paint, I don't see GI sheets, I don't see purlins. I see the opportunity to be able to produce your own power and rely less on the grid, on the Meralcos of the world, on the Batalex of the world. Not that they're doing a terrible job; they are doing a service. But to complement what they do, so they can actually supply more of the others that are necessary, this would be the case. And that is also the case that why we have 3 case studies in the around Southeast Asia where we're investing in right now. You look at the Philippines, where close to 10 million people still have less access to power. Indonesia, that is multiplied 5-fold. And you look at that archipelago, that span, wherein they are they used to be a net energy exporter. And I know Sech talked about geothermal. That was the company I worked for as well. Sui and I were working in Malampaya together. Those large-scale generation facilities are great, and they're good for baseload. But for the islands themselves, you will really need complementary, smaller solutions. And that's where this company is decided to go. In Myanmar, pre-junta, we have been looking at the Irrawaddy Delta and all these other places where electricity cannot go and where electricity is so expensive, around 100 pesos per kilowatt hour. And that's just for you who don't pay your bills. That's around 10 times the amount. So bottom line is, for us, we are going to be in these areas. And at the end of the day, the multiplier effect from these areas are good. You're looking at least 10 effects, from educational benefits to energy security, to reducing pollution, to reducing energy inequality, and to powering a quality of life that really measures up to what is in first world countries. The technology is quite simple. We are basically, to use an analogy, we are like the Napacor or the AC Energy of the area, plus the NGCP, plus the Meralco. And effectively, a microgrid allows you to build these 3 systems into one, wherein you are actually promoting energy security in a small community using the best technology and the best synergies available, so that they can become world-class cities, as Bill likes propounding with the current cities they have right now. And the way we're going to do it is using hybrid technology, because we've also done a financial calculation, and this has been presented to the Senate Energy Committee with Senator Gatchalian, a great leader, that at the end of the day, if you use hybrid power, whether it be solar, storage, or biodiesel, or in a coastal community's case, micro turbine or wind, you'll be able to reduce the cost to make it a lot easier for businesses to come in, resorts to come in, cold storage to be built, and to have communities enjoy a quality of life that we are used to. More importantly, I think this is the innovation we're doing right now, is in Puerto Princesa, we are building what we call an agrivoltaic facility, wherein underneath our panels, we are working with a world-class drip irrigation specialists to not use the ecosystem we have around, but to actually be able to use this to supply Puerto Princesa with its agricultural needs. And interestingly enough, when we did the market study, we found out that most of the goods and vegetables come in from Manila, which in turn come in from Benguet. So at the end of the day, we are reducing the supply chain pain points by producing energy and also producing food. And the first seedlings are going to be planted this December. Thankfully, Puerto Princesa is now welcoming visitors back, and we will do the first tree planting and vegetable planting then. You could take a pick in terms of what the agriculture wants, but effectively we will be growing a farm underneath a solar farm. And what it really means is that these microgrids that have been up since 2019, although it took 7 years for us to get the permits to do this, these microgrids like the one in Palawan, which is the first hybrid smart microgrid in the Philippines under the Qualified Third Party Program, DOE, can actually be replicated across the board. And we've actually identified 21 more sites for investment in 2022. Now, if the government via Paleco or the DOE starts issuing the regulations right away, then we can invest this amount of capital. Our partners would love to invest in this amount of capital there. We're also doing the same in Myanmar. Thankfully, I think the UNDP is taking over from some of these contracts, so we don't have to deal with the junta. And basically, we will be able to empower the citizens there as well. Same thing with Indonesia, wherein we are going to take these similar microgrids and work with different utilities and communities across this wonderful country and neighbor that's across us. I want to close by saying that it's exciting, but it's also challenging. And if you look at, forget about all these bullet points and the check marks. The first two, the last two, financing and technology, we've taken care of. Companies like AC Energy and the other companies really have the technology and capital down pat, and so do we, especially for our niche. Where it needs help is on the local and the national side for us to have an enabling environment that allows these microgrids and off-grid solutions to be built without so much friction, so much headache, and at the end of the day, less corruption. And I'm thankful to Director Mylene because she's been such a great leader. Secretary Cusi has enabled this environment. Director Mario, I understand, is now catching up with the regulations that we need to be able to submit these unsolicited proposals. That will help us put the investments in. Because to tell you the truth, as the head of international business development and a Filipino, I'm sometimes conflicted where I want to put our capital in the Philippines, but if the rules are so complicated and so slow, then we'd rather invest in Papua New Guinea, which is fairly new, but at least very much more welcome in terms of less bureaucracy. So to be frank, and I'll put this into dialogue, we're really excited to invest in all the countries, especially my home country, the Philippines. We do need a more enabling environment, swifter passage of regulations, and we're happy to create that as we are doing right now with Senator Gatchalian with his microgrid law. So in closing, I would like to share with you that instead of the PowerPoint presentation that I do on tarpaulins in areas outside in the West Philippine Sea, it would be great now to enjoy an internet cafe with a cold storage facility, with gaming facilities, and everybody employed creating value in communities while protecting the environment. This is not the current situation right now. That was a picture taken of me using no electricity to help spread the gospel of renewable energy. I hope we will have more players, more investors, and more communities in the grid, renewably empowered, and we're happy to have that dialogue and support the government to meet the 100% energization target by 2022. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to the dialogue.
Thank you, Quintin, and congratulations on the plans for the agri-voltaic plant, which is a plant that makes plants, or a farm, or a solar farm that's a farm. So good luck on that, and congrats pala dun sa Palawan hybrid plant, which is when we first met, we worked together in 2016. That was plants pa lang, now it's a producing project. So good on that.
Thank you,
so thank you, Q. And now we'll bring up our next speaker. We're honored to have Attorney Jay Layug. So Attorney Jay is currently the president of DREAM, and DREAM stands for Developers of Renewable Energy for Advancement. He's also a senior partner at Puno and Puno Law Office. He recently served as chairman of the National Renewable Energy Board from 2016 to 2018, and was the Undersecretary of the Department of Energy, the DOE, from 2010 to 2012, and headed the Renewable Energy Management Bureau, the Energy Resources Development Bureau, the Energy Utilization Management Bureau, Oil Industry Management Bureau, and Legal Services. Quite a number of roles there, Attorney Jay. He was primarily responsible for the revival of various sectors in the Philippine energy sector with successful launching of the National Renewable Energy Program, the Philippine Energy Contracting Rounds for Petroleum and Coal, and the Public Transport Assistance Program of Pantawid Pasada. To give us the industry perspective of the current state and prospects of renewable energy in the country, and to discuss the market fundamentals, key issues, challenges underlying the power industry, let us welcome Attorney Jay Layog. Attorney Jay, hello and welcome to our webinar.
Hi, Sui. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. Of course, to Her Excellency British Ambassador Bofius. Good afternoon, and all old friends and old faces. No, it's good to see friends in the industry here. And of course, I'd like to greet all LGUs. I understand there are a lot of participants from different LGUs today. Let me just share with you the experience of the private sector, especially when it comes to putting up renewable energy. Now, earlier, of course, our friend, Director Mai, presented the overview of all the policies that has been issued by the Department of Energy and the National Renewable Energy Board. But I guess what's good to know at this point in time is to look at what has happened since the law was passed way back in 2008. Ang Renewable Energy Act po ay pinasa noong taong 2008. And you will see from early years of the law, we had at that time around 30% installed capacity in the energy mix of the Philippines coming from renewables. However, after almost 11 years or 10 years, we've gone the opposite way. From 34%, you will see from this diagram, we went down to 29% renewables. And instead, you will also see from here that as of 2020, coal installation even went higher to 41% from the original 27%. It becomes worse in terms of actual generation because of capacity factor. You will see from here, once upon a time, we hit 32% renewables, meaning electricity generated from RE, way back in 2009. And then in 2019, ito po yung medyo nakakalungkot, we are down to 20%. It went down. As I mentioned, we went the opposite way. And that's a sad state of affairs for the renewable side. And we have seen, because of that, once upon a time, we were energy self-sufficient to the extent of 67%. Bakit po? Because we were relying on a lot of our renewable energy resources, meaning we don't import as much fuel or energy resources. However, because of the lowering of renewable energy generation and the increase in coal and the use of coal and diesel, look at what has happened to the Philippines. As of 2019, our energy self-sufficiency went down to 46%. So that's quite alarming. Why? Because if we continue to rely on importation of energy resources, that means we are always vulnerable to price increases. We have seen that lately. We have seen that for the last 2 months, oil prices have been going up. And because we also have a lot of bunker fuel or diesel generator sets in the system, that means potentially our electricity prices will also go up. So that's a very sad state of affairs currently. On the other hand, let's look at the demand for power. Now, while we had COVID for the last 2 years, you will see that when we started easing up the restrictions, in fact po, as of May 14, 2021, our demand for power, the peak demand, hit 15,000 megawatts at 2 p.m. That was the height of summer in the Philippines. That means our demand for energy continues to grow. Yung COVID po, the reduction in demand was just temporary. But now that we are beginning to do more activities and opening up our economy, you will now see that demand for power has started going up. Now, it also shows, based on DOE, that we need more power. No, the Philippine economy continues to grow, and by 2040, sabi ho ng Department of Energy, based on an average growth demand for power of 4%, we need additional 43,000 megawatts, the entire Philippines. No, so all these are now the current state of affairs in the Philippines. Now, what have we done? As explained by Director Mylene, no? We implemented the net metering program way back in 2010, 2011. Not only that, we also issued the renewable portfolio standards in 2018. Ibig sabihin po, all utilities must buy renewable energy. No, they have to put in their portfolio renewable energy power plants. No? And that goes for both on-grid areas and off-grid areas. And also we have what we call the Green Energy Option Program. This is very important, especially for local governments. Under existing DOE rules, if you have a demand for power, peak demand of 100 kilowatt. Sino po yung 100 kilowatt? Siguro mga buildings po yan, hotels, resorts, no? Manufacturing plants. They can directly buy power from renewable energy suppliers. Pwede na po yan under existing rules. That's the Green Energy Option Program. And because that is allowed, you can now choose RE as your source of power. I saw a question earlier that solar power supposedly is more expensive than the average grid rate of a utility. That is not true po. No? If you look at the power supply agreements being entered into by major utilities, ngayon po, you will see that the price ranges from 3 pesos 25 centavos to around 3 pesos 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Magkano po ang diesel? No? Ang bunker fuel, mahal po yan, 9, 10 pesos, lalo na ho ngayon, no? Tumataas. No? But now, because you can choose your power from an RE supplier, you can buy cheaper electricity. And that's the reason why we have industry players such as Quintin and Sedge. No? They have put up all these power plants, RE resources based, to make sure that they can offer to you much cheaper electricity. So that's also where we are. But of course, is there a lot of improvement that we can do? Yes, definitely po, especially from an LGU perspective. Number one, we need more supply. Nako, kailangan po. We need more power plants. I've shown you earlier, demand for power continues to grow. And in the meantime, supply is a problem over the years. What else? We need to upgrade our transmission lines. Currently, NGCP is doing that. But at the same time, we need our distribution utilities and electric cooperatives to also upgrade their infrastructure. And finally, we need more supply. That's why Quintin and Sedge earlier shared their own experiences. No? What has happened over the years? Ito po, I want to show you some data. No? In the Philippines, about 30% of your power comes from power plants that are 15 years older. No, 15 years over and above. Now, that means po, dahil matanda ng planta, they have started to conk out. Nasisira na po ang mga planta. And that means we need more new supply for power. It's not a good data set that you will see, because that means our power plants are aging. And therefore, we need to start building more renewable energy plants. Now, how do we solve the problem? And this is where LGU can also help. Number one, based on experience of the private sector, there are too many restrictive government regulations. And this is where we appeal also to our friends at the LGUs. Sana po mapabilis natin, yung lalo na yung mga permitting process, because we've had some issues. Medyo it's very difficult to secure all permits. And to put up a power plant, by the way, you need 200 signatures from different government agencies. Number two, we've appealed, of course, to the DOE. Itong rigid process for entering into a power supply agreement. But the DOE has finally amended the CSP rules. Number three, sana ho mabawasan ng permits and licenses. This is something that we need to really work on, especially from the government side. And number four, this is always what we appeal for. Sana ho lahat mag-usap. so that we can coordinate, no, in one integrated system all these permits that we need to secure. No? We need to pursue a policy reform. No? We need to declare, the government needs to declare that the preferred source of energy is actually renewables. I've shown you the data. No? The more we rely on renewables, no, the more we will import less of the coal and diesel, no? And therefore we will be less vulnerable to price volatility. No? Also, as we have mentioned, we have to strengthen public-private partnerships. This is where the LGUs can come in. LGUs can actually partner with the private sector to put up power plants. No? I've gone around in the past in different LGUs. In your respective areas, may kanya-kanya ho kayong river systems, good places for wind. No? You also have a lot of waste to energy, by the way, potential. No? There has been a study conducted by USAID, no, around 4,000 megawatts potential. We gather all the waste and that can produce power, and that falls also under the Renewable Energy Act. And hopefully, if we are all coordinated, we can put up more power plants running on renewables and avoid this supply crunch. No? We hope that someday we can reduce reliance on imported fuel and rely more on renewable energy resources. I'll be ready to answer questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Jay. Very, very wise words from you, and based on a lot of your experience. I like what you mentioned about we need so much more of the supply, so much more transmission, more infra, and naturally more coordination to get these things done quickly. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, so our next speaker is, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. His name is Tony Coveney, Managing Director of Thomas Lloyd Group. So Tony joined the Thomas Lloyd Group in 2006 and is responsible for the identification, selection, execution, and management of the group's sustainable infrastructure portfolio, and is a member of the board of directors. He was part of the management team who led the group's investment in the Philippines, which includes, in 2014, the first utility-scale solar plant in the country and the first IFC financing transaction in the Philippines. Over the past decade, he has played a key role in the firm's successful deployment of over $1 billion in sustainable infrastructure investments in fast-growing and emerging markets. Tony has been involved in and led a number of delegations to the Philippines in 2013, 2016, 2019, and India in 2019 and 2020, hosting institutional investors, allocators of capital, policymakers, and government officials. To discuss about how can foreign investments help local government, let us welcome to our Livable Cities Lab, Tony Coveney. Hello, Tony. Welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Mabu.
Good afternoon.
Could I just check you can see the slides?
Yes, Tony. I can see the slides and we can hear and see you well. So go ahead.
Excellent. Please. Excellent. Well, welcome from London. I'd like to just start off by pointing out for Quentin, here is a very large hybrid power plant. You've got the solar in the front and biomass in the back, taken in San Carlos City on Negros. By way of introduction, Thomas Lloyd, we were founded in 2003. And for the last 10 years, we've been a dedicated investor in renewable energy power facilities across Southeast Asia. We have about 600 megawatts of installed capacity in operation and about 1,200 megawatts of power projects in development and construction at this time. We're very familiar with the Philippines, as was mentioned in the introduction. We made our first investment there in 2011, and we've just celebrated our 10th anniversary. Most importantly, why is investing in Southeast Asia, and particularly in the Philippines, why is it important to me back here in London? Ultimately, we all breathe the same air. And as this chart shows, if you look on the right-hand side, it's the carbon cost per $1 trillion of GDP the carbon cost of GDP per $1 trillion, comparing the 4 largest economies in Europe, that's the little bit on the right-hand side, with the larger economies in Asia. And you can see it gets progressively worse the more to the left you go. In reality, Asia now produces about 4 times the CO2 emissions per $1 trillion of GDP than we do here in Europe, which means every dollar that I spend in Asia gets me a minimum of 4 times the sustainability and climate impact as the same dollar spent here in Europe. And if we're serious about a net zero world by 2050, then all of the heavy lifting now needs to be done in Asia, where more than 50% of the world's CO2 emissions exist. And as I remind my European friends, investing now in renewable energy in Europe is like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic. It may look pretty, but it won't affect the overall outcome. But it's a very competitive landscape. The numbers here are provided by the Global Infrastructure Hub, which is a G7 initiative. It's an independent think tank. And as you can see, the scale of the challenge just in these 6 markets in Asia. And this means that there's a competition for capital. According to the Global Infrastructure Hub, the Philippines needs to generate just short of half a trillion dollars between now and 2030. The Department of Energy's own numbers have the requirement for new capital in the Philippines for power generation alone at 160 billion US dollars. That's more than one country's ability to meet. But as you can see, the Philippines will be competing for capital with the likes of Vietnam, Indonesia, etc. And both Quintin and Sech in earlier presentations spoke of the wider range of opportunities they see across Asia. As I said, we've been investing and building and operating power plants in the Philippines now for 10 years. We view it as our home market, and we're proud as a British company to have been the financier behind the first installed utility scale capacity using any technology in the Philippines back in 2014. Since then, we've built 3 biomass plants using the sugarcane trash in order to generate electricity. We've got one here in San Carlos City in Negros, another one in La Carlota City in Negros, and the third one in Manapla, to the north of Bacolod in Negros. In Negros, between 2011 and today, we've invested just short of $500 million US. These power plants are very important, not only because they help meet the generating needs of the country, but they have so many various knock-on effects that create greater impacts. The first thing that we do from these power plants is that we create income for the farmers. We buy the sugarcane trash off of the farmer, a resource that would have been left to rot in the field or to be burnt off. Secondly, we collect the sugarcane trash from the farmer. So we improve his margins by saving him the cost of doing anything else with it. Thirdly, in the process of collecting it, we part till the land, which improves the yield to the farmer. So at the micro level, the farmer now has 3 benefits. The fourth benefit is that it's creating locally generated stable electricity. And that locally generated stable electricity allows other employment growth and other wealth generation to the local community. The fifth thing that we do is by removing the sugarcane trash from the field, the farmer no longer needs to burn the trash. And that not only has an impact for the local community, the wider country, but also for the world. Everything that's not burnt is improving the air quality for me back here in Europe. As I say, we all breathe the same air. But I'd like to pick up on a 6th benefit, energy security. And I was very impressed with the last presentation slides, which highlighted that need. Every peso spent on buying sugarcane trash from the farmer is a peso that stays in the local community, is a peso that benefits the local community. But equally importantly now, is a peso that doesn't need to be used to buy US dollars to buy foreign coal or foreign oil. It's a unique benefit. But I'd like to go back to something that Quintin said, a strong point that Quintin made throughout his presentation. You'd think that these plants would have been welcomed as part of the energy mix and as part of the solution. They were all constructed and ready for operation in 2019. They were all built under the terms of the 2008 Renewable Energy Act, which has been referred to during many of the presentations today. However, and this chart shows that NGCP knows that these plants are there. And this chart shows that the Department of Energy knows that these plants have been there and have been there since 2019. But these plants have been barred from exporting their power. These plants have been stopped from becoming commercially operational. And these plants have therefore been idle now for 2 years. That's 2 years that could have been money spent on building extra facilities. That's 2 years of income that the farmers have lost. That's 2 years of lost job opportunities. That's 2 years of buying unnecessary dollars to buy unnecessary coal when you could have used pesos to buy local sugarcane trash. Think of all that wasted opportunity at the micro level, at the state level, at the national level, and at the global level. But why is that important today? I think it's important today because if we go back to my first picture of the competitive landscape, the Philippines is competing for capital. It's competing for capital not only from international investors, but also, as you heard from Sech, from your own local investors. They have opportunities as well in Vietnam and Indonesia. You're competing for capital in a difficult world. But most importantly, you're competing for capital from people who have other options. Thomas Lloyd would like to continue to be an investor in the Philippines. I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking to an audience of local governments. Please contact me. One of the things that the ambassador pointed out early on today is the commitment of the British government to increasing the spend and encouraging further investment in order to drive money into the Philippines. Thomas Lloyd is a beneficiary of that, and I'm absolutely delighted to tell you all that the UK government has become an investor in the Thomas Lloyd Fund in order to encourage others to come in and support wider investment in renewable and sustainable infrastructure in Asia. I love coming to the Philippines. My colleagues love coming to the Philippines. We treat the Philippines as our home market. We would love to do more. I need your help to persuade the Department of Energy to grant these plants the opportunity after 2 years of being idle. Plants that are ready to make a difference to your economy, ready to make a difference to your voters, to your consumers, to your farmers. I'm also here and available if anybody else needs any more money to copy the strategy across from Negros. And I support all of the three previous speakers. Clarity, simplicity, and opportunity are all correlated. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you today. I look forward to any questions and I look forward, hopefully, to meeting you all in person one day rather than via Zoom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for your kind words and also inspiring stories about the projects of Thomas Lloyd in the country. Thank you. We'd like to, if you have questions for Tony or the prior speakers, please, we invite you to keep on putting the questions there in the Q&A box. Our last speaker, we are honored to have Philip Napier-Moore, the program leader of Renewable Power East Asia for Mott MacDonald Limited. So Philip leads the Mott MacDonald's technical advisory work for solar and wind in the East Asia region, supporting plant owners, investors, and lenders from the sector's infancy in 2008. He has overseen technical inputs for more than 9,000 megawatts of projects in Asia, including 250 plants, which are now in operation, and several milestone developments in the Philippines. He has directed and managed projects for multilateral agencies, national governments, and a large number of private companies, working internationally on low-carbon power projects in 30 countries around the world, and in particular within Asia and Europe. So Mott MacDonald is the UK's delivery partner for the Global Future Cities program, with the BCDA and Cebu City, and the 2050 Energy and Emissions Calculator with the Department of Energy. So to discuss about the opportunities of floating solar in the Philippines, let us welcome Philip Napier-Moore. Hello, Philip. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me and see my screen.
Yes, Philip, you're coming in quite clear and we can see your screen. So please go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah. So thank you everyone for having me here today. I'm going to share a specific case study, specific technology case study that is relevant to the Philippines and is perhaps a kind of newer on the scene than many of the technologies we've heard about already. So I think a good opportunity to raise the profile of floating solar. So briefly to introduce Mott MacDonald, we're a large international engineering and management consultancy working across the world, very active in the Asia region. We've fairly consistently been working on more renewable energy projects across the East Asia region than others, as reflected in the kind of awards you can see there. And the companies were active across many different infrastructure sectors. I'm working in our power section, but there's clear complementarity in things like floating solar and offshore wind with the work we do in other sectors as well, with all the marine infrastructure. And, you know, we've been privileged to work on floating solar since 2013, alongside many other renewable energy technologies, including several proposed developments in the Philippines, Laguna Lake being one example, where a number of different developers are looking at large-scale projects. There's also some other examples shown here on the slide of large-scale developments in South Asia and in Taiwan. So floating solar is relatively new. If we just go back 10 years, then the largest scale project was only a few hundred kilowatts. Since 2016, we've seen plants of the scale about 10 megawatts. And just in the last couple of years, we've started to see projects in the 100 megawatt scale. As of 2018, the amount of installed capacity was about where ground-mounted solar was in 2000. And we expect that maybe, 10 years down the line, we could have as much, floating solar as we have ground-mounted solar now. So there's a lot of potential in terms of freshwater and seawater spaces where this technology could be installed. I think there's particular relevance to Asia. This is a nice slide which has many different applications and was circulating on Pinterest for a while. There's more people inside this circle than outside it. And clearly that has all sorts of implications for intensity of land use and pressure on resources, whether that's land resources, water resources, or just overall kind of density and population and power demand. But I think it's also particularly relevant for floating solar because it means there's potentially less available land for renewable energy developments compared with some other parts of the world. There's also in this within this circle and in archipelago climates like the Philippines, many times there's the opportunity to install on water bodies nearer to population centers than there is on land. It fits in that same niche that we heard about earlier of rooftop solar. We don't need to use land, we can use the water body, and that can be closer to the population centers. So Asia Pacific is definitely set to dominate the floating solar scene globally. We've already seen lots of projects along those lines, and I think Philippines is a great example of a place where this has great promise. Just to be clear on what kind of technology we're talking about, just a few pictures. You can see at the bottom here a overall graphic of a floating solar project. We have the PV modules mounted on floats, various types of floats available. The power, the DC power, is converted to AC and stepped up, similar with a normal solar project. These are examples of the kind of floats where you would install the PV modules on, so they sit on the water. You have to moor them to the lake bed or to the shore, and then you export the power to the grid in the normal way. And there are pros and cons to this type of technology. I mean, we've mentioned already that abundant inland water surfaces and the ability to save land space and land costs is a key benefit. Often the modules can actually run cooler from the fact they're on top of water, which actually improves output as well. There's generally less shading around from trees and hills on water bodies, which again helps the production of the plant. And it can even actually help reduce the evaporation of water from the water bodies. So for freshwater reservoirs, for example, having the floats on top of the water body can actually help save water. But there are downsides as well. There is still a lack of track record at scale. There's definite technical complexity in key design areas. There's natural hazard risk, which we have to deal with for all types of infrastructure, but it can be higher for floating solar than for ground-mounted solar, for example. High wind speeds can be a challenge, and that's a particular issue we have to deal with for design in the Philippines with the typhoon risk. So far, there's not so many supporting standards, and costs remain a little higher than ground-mounted. Now, that can be compensated for with the lower land costs and lower transmission costs. So definite technical challenges to overcome, but nonetheless, a lot of promise. I'm not going to talk about this graphic in detail, but it's a similar view of the kind of benefits and warning points produced from a very good World Bank publication, which you may wish to look up as well, Where Sun Meets Water. So on to some specific example projects. This is an example project from the UK, which came online in March 2016. It's the Queen Elizabeth II Reservoir Project. It's 6.3 megawatts, so about 23,000 solar panels, so enough to power about 1,800 homes. When it came online, it was the largest in the world. You may have even seen it if you've actually circled around Heathrow at any point. It's only about 13 kilometers from Heathrow Airport. If anyone was traveling, probably before the pandemic, you may have been able to actually see it out of the plane window. So I think as we go on to the more recent projects, you'll see how far we've come in terms of scale. But it's very useful to have large-scale projects already operating for more than 5 years. Clearly, the early projects are where we get the lessons learned, and there have been teething problems on these early projects, including this project in the UK. There was news in the press of a small fire last year. There's been other lessons learned from the projects. And that's where the technical complexity comes in and where the experience from the previous projects is really relevant. This is, again, an example of what these floats look like. You can see the walkway between the floats in the front. It doesn't look that stable, but once you're on them, it doesn't actually feel too uncomfortable walking on this on the water. Here's a float module with a float unit with the PV module mounted on it. And you can see this is all being assembled on land to be floated, pushed down the ramp and floated out onto the water body. This is a more recent project. This was commissioned in November last year. It's the Chenya floating solar project in Taiwan. So since the UK project being the largest in the world, the record was taken by Japan, then China, now Taiwan, with this 181 megawatt project. So this is enough to power more like 50,000 homes, 30 times the scale of the Queen Elizabeth II, and really highlights that point about Asia taking the lead on floating solar deployment based on the early experience in various parts of the world. This is actually a seawater floating solar project. It's the first utility scale seawater floating solar project in the world. That brings extra challenges with salinity, with the tide going up and down, with the ocean waves. And we were very pleased to be involved in helping deliver this using a combination of our specialists in the region and back in the UK. Clearly, we had to compensate for lack of technical guidance. And this is some of the inherent project challenges are detailed here. I won't go into them in much depth. But again, really just to highlight, there is the opportunity to use sheltered bays for saltwater projects. Again, that saves land. We just have to pay attention to the technical constraints and learn the lessons from the previous projects. So aim to keep it pretty brief, leave some time for questions. To round up, we do see significant opportunity for floating solar in the Philippines. Floating solar is booming globally. It's well suited to archipelago geographies that have land constraints and large freshwater bodies. Also where there's sheltered saltwater bays. There are technical challenges that remain, but these are being resolved through experience. And this is why we as a technical advisor are involved. There's very large scale projects in complex conditions that are going ahead across Asia. I've mentioned the projects up to 180 megawatt already developed. We're working with clients that are considering schemes much, much larger than that, up to 10 times larger again. But the projects can be developed at various scales. So you can develop them still from, kilowatts, hundreds of kilowatt scales up to those gigawatt scale. And it can be suitable at the local level for municipal water storage and industrial ponds. So I think the relevance for the audience here is that Philippine LGUs can work together with locally active developers. There's a number of Philippine developers already active in floating solar. That combination of partners can explore and harness the opportunity for this local carbon neutral power source. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. It's an interesting technology that you just shared with us. I'm sure there'll be lots of interest from our audience. And that Queen Elizabeth Reservoir looks familiar. You do see it on the plane coming in. No? So let's please stay on screen while we bring the other panelists back so that we can start our Q&A. Attorney Jay is still online, but he's moving to another place, but he's still online. No? He can still answer our questions. Oh my goodness, we've got 10 questions in the Q&A box. So I encourage you to please keep on putting those questions there. Let's get a gallery view of everybody in the panel so that we can take a picture. Okay, mga speakers, please center yourself on the screen and give a good smile and look at your camera, and our guys will take a picture. Okay, ready? 1, 2, and all right. Okay, good. We'll kick off with a few questions. Again, let's start from the most voted question, and then let's put this out to Sech, and perhaps the other folks in the RE development space. The question goes is from Bernard Paul Mangulabnan. Okay, so does AC Energy get a concrete support from the government in transitioning to pure renewable energy firm to aim to be a coal-free power company by 2025? Seems ambitious in the Philippine context. Kudos for aiming high. So Sech, maybe you can answer this question from Bernard.
Sure. Thank you. And yes, we are indeed aiming high. We get support in the sense that the government and the DOE provide support really to the whole industry to head in that direction. And so I think we are working very much within those guidelines and try to achieve them. But we don't get any specific or direct financial support or anything like that, and certainly nothing that isn't available to everybody else, both big and small. So I think AC Energy is working towards those objectives really as a matter of faith, principle in terms of both doing what we think is right, but also significantly and importantly, also going in the direction that we think the world and economic opportunity is leading us. We think that it will ultimately eventually be more successful for companies to head in this direction and support these moves. And we certainly hope also to encourage others to go down the same route. And once we're all kind of moving in that direction, then I think we help Director Mylene achieve the objectives that she and her colleagues are trying to get the country to meet.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Sech. That's our top voted question. And thanks for answering that. Next question is addressed to Attorney Jay, and then I think also we can ask Director Mylene to answer this question. So first, Attorney Jay, the question, this is from an anonymous person. How can RA 11032, aka the Ease of Doing Business in Efficient Government Service Delivery Act, help in speeding up the permitting licensing process for renewable energy facilities? Seemingly, in spite of this law, the permitting process still leaves much to be desired. Follow-on question, while I have you here, Attorney Jay, and also Director Mylene, you might want to answer this. No, this is from Noli San Agustin. He is the head of renewable energy in Pasig, LGU. Even our solar rooftop projects, yung mga net metering agreements, ang tagal ma-process. What else pa kung yun ang private? No? So just an insight from him. No? Maybe you'd like to comment on that. Attorney Jay and Director Mylene, on to you to answer the questions, please.
Okay. So on the question of how we can use the ease of business law, no, to facilitate, we have already, and thanks to Senator Win Gatchalian, an online platform for permits and licenses for power plants. No? Of course, the problem is it's only the DOE who participated, no, in that online system. I'm hoping that all government agencies will already participate in the online platform service of the DOE. So that will facilitate definitely all the permits. Number two, yes, the private sector has experienced also this issue of net metering permits, no? And we're hoping that the local government will help us, no? And also the distribution utilities and the electric cooperatives. No? The ERC already issued a set of rules to facilitate the permittings for net metering. No? So we're hoping that more and more people will put up solar rooftop systems in their homes. But definitely we need all government agencies from national to local government to help us. No? How do we do it? Well, if there's really a will, there's a way, right? We just need to make sure that if there's an application, it is prioritized and facilitated very quickly. That's our hope.
Thank you, Attorney Jay. Director Mylene, would you like to add to the answers of Attorney Jay?
Yes, thank you. Actually, the EBOS or the 11032 RA provides the number of days for all the government agencies included in the permitting and licensing issuance to act on that manner, because there is an active monitoring done by the DOE. And there's a steering committee headed by an official from Malacanang, Office of the President, who is overseeing the monitoring whether these applications are received by the government or by the Department of Energy are being processed on time. So we're happy to note that based on the last data I have shown, about 99, almost 98% of the applications have been processed on time.
About on net
metering, that is exactly why we triggered what we call the DILG DOE Energy Code. Because when we step in the net metering implementation, there's a lot of barriers, meaning even from the side of the distribution utility, you need to pay for the distribution impact study. You wait for the processing, no? But now it's removed by ERC, and we're triggering the LGU Energy Code, no? Meaning for all the local government units to adapt to a harmonized requirement for all net metering. And in fact, we have noted that there are black market for net metering, no? So as part of that is a guidebook. So anytime soon we will be triggering that energy code or partnership with the DILG and the local government to further the net metering implementation in the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Mylene. Next question, I address this to Tony. Tony, Raulito Reyes would like to ask for your email address. He does have a follow-up question. This is interesting. And maybe Philip, since you're well versed with different technologies on renewable energy, you might want to answer this as well. No? So he says, Raulito Reyes says, Sir Tony, do you have already a microturbine for tidal energy? It says that they can also serve as a giant aerator for 2 cove bay areas with more or less 500 hectares potential mariculture zone. It says here that more or less 5 knots tidal current to move in, making the bay area less productive by opening the same with a culvert embedded with a microturbine. So this sounds like a potential feasibility study for you. But can you talk about tidal energy and maybe try to address Raulito Reyes' question here? You go first, Tony, then we'll have Philip. Tidal energy.
Unfortunately, I'm not an expert on tidal energy, so I'll pass on that one. But I think the most important thing is to look for opportunities where there are chances to use more than one technology. So in the places in Negros where we've invested, we've been putting solar facilities alongside biopower facilities. Okay. The key advantage to a biopower plant not only is the economics and the gains to the farmers, the gains to the community, and the gains to the country, but it's also base load. It's there 24/7. It's a direct replacement for coal. Mm-hmm. So my question always remains to the Department of Energy, why are these plants still not able to get into commercial operation? Why is the department still blocking the use of renewable energy, which is already constructed and already available, that would then allow us to go to many other of the LGUs and offer exactly the same blended approach, backed by hard cash.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Tony. Philip?
Sure. So with respect to tidal energy, I mean, the mature technology is the tidal barrage. So there's many examples of large-scale schemes that have been developed where you would actually block off the whole bay. The tidal turbines are less mature, but there are examples of demonstration projects, including in the water bodies next to New York, for example, where they're demonstrating use of tidal technology. And we're certainly working on projects around the world that are also exploring their use, again, at a small scale. So definitely, something to continue looking at, but not at the same level of maturity as the other technologies that have been profiled here today. It is difficult to maintain and access marine renewables in general. And so they are, you'll see that wave and tidal have been on a kind of slower path than many of the other renewables that we've talked about today. I mean, I would encourage, those sheltered coves could be used for floating solar. That's another option.
That's right. That's right. That's true. So as Tony mentioned, you can go one or the other or both. Quentin has his hand raised, and maybe you can chime in on this. And by the way, Quentin, you might want to answer this next question. If solar farm this is from Fernando Habola. If solar farm shall include comprehensive land use program, how many square meters minimum requirement? Yeah, I know you have the, and also on the environmental impact assessment, this is from an anonymous attendee. You have experience in doing these things in the Philippines. He says that where can we access the environmental impact assessment documents for RE projects if you have experience on this? Go ahead.
I'll try to do a hat trick quickly. But for the tidal turbines, we've actually done feasibility studies in Laos and Cambodia. That's typically to augment the flow rate of the current dams. That is a more practical way of doing it. As for base, you really have to take into account the velocity of the area. Yeah. We can do 500 to 1 megawatt, even smaller microturbines, but that would really depend on the flow rate and in fact we have actually commissioned a study with the University of Delft and have hired the engineer in charge of that. So we're happy to share that with you. We've done the same feasibility studies for Palawan. Unfortunately, Palawan the waters are more benign, so you're probably going to have to take eastern side of the Philippines to do that. and we're happy to work with you on that. It's very site specific. So like what Tony and Philip was mentioning,
That's right.
you really have to. It has to be a contingency approach in terms of what renewable energy source works on the specific area. But if there is tidal, where the velocity is, let's say, between 3 to 5 kilometers per hour, that's the starting point, and we can start talking there. I've sent my email there. As for the EIS statements, I think they should be available in the regional office, because in the Philippines itself, and this is also the same thing we did for our microgrid in Palawan, which is apart from the EIS and the ECCs, that is usually with the Regional 4 office for Palawan, and you can pretty much access it there. I think the FOI law allows you to now just write for it and access those things with the DNR and the regional bureau. So that should be the SANRO or the PEMRO. So that should be helpful. And one of the things you can also access is what we can do on the environment, on the farm size. It doesn't really matter. I think what DAR wants, especially if you're into converting these lands from agricultural to either commercial, or you keep them agricultural and you increase the productivity, you have to demonstrate that the baseline when you get the land is going to be improved on by multiples over time. So in our case, this is both an obligation and a CSR activity, that we have to produce enough agriculture to say that there was a significant and acute increase and sustainable increase in agriculture productivity. So we are the first plant is around 5,000 square meters, although the area is just 3.5 square meters. So we'll start with that pilot. That is enough for us to meet two needs, which is one, to prove that the Department of Agriculture and Agrarian Reform, that there is enough agricultural productivity out there, and number two, that the crops that we actually plant are really what the market needs. In this case, we have hotels nearby. They want more lettuce and more tomatoes, so why not, right? So it's just both the market and the compliance, and you can start as low as between 2,000 to 5,000 square meters, and that would be a good enough compliance and CSR activity. Thanks.
There's a final follow-up question to Quintin. Since you already had projects implemented in the Philippines, how difficult or how easy was it, considering the bureaucratic goings on in the government?
No, I'll say this is constructive, right? I mean, the Philippines is one of the most mature and enabling environments in terms of regulation. What we need, though, is a way to do a one-stop shop wherein the permits take a lot less in terms of time and less friction in terms of doing that. Sabang took 7 years to build because we were doing this the straightforward way, ironically, and we just needed we need help in terms of where the government can really help is in terms of making sure the guidelines and the regulations are out. The case in point is that the qualified third-party regulations for rural electrification have been pending for 2 years. There was supposed to be a bid coming out from Palawan and Negros, and that's just 2 out of the 100 plus cooperatives that need to have rural electrification done by third parties, and they haven't come out yet. And we're worried that the elections are going to overtake all of that. So, I mean, thankfully, Director Mylene is there at the REMB. I know Director Mario is going to catch up in terms of those regulations. We're hoping it comes before the elections. Otherwise, we start from scratch. That's really what it is. We've got a great environment. We've got great regulations, always in the implementation. I hope we can help. Yeah.
Thank you, Quintin. We are slightly over time, but I'd like to this is a fantastic panel and it's a large panel, but I would like to get everybody an opportunity to say one last tip, one last tip, one sentence, hopefully less, as few words as you can, What will it take to make repowering Philippine cities possible, a reality? Okay. Let's start with Director Mylene.
Yeah, thank you, Swiss. Actually, if we coordinate, if we work together, we will be able to achieve, more power, more capacities, and less problematic implementation for all the policies, not only on the renewable. The Department of Energy, whether you believe it or not, has been working towards, entry of more private sector investment. But there are policies, guidelines, and that need to be followed. So again, and with the participation of our local government units, we we do not see any problem why we can't meet our goal of achieving 35%
35%.
RE share by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mylene. Next, one final tip, Seth.
Yeah, I'm reminded that a lot of our audience members here are from LGUs. And so one thing I'd like to share with them is, let's put aside what AC Energy is doing on the utility scale. Someone made the point earlier that solar power is cheaper than thermal power today. And where you have distributed solar power, that's even more the case. So I think, someone asked the question about co-locating farms with solar power, and what Quintin is doing is fantastic. Kudos to them. I hope they do a lot more.
Yeah.
We have a couple of those projects. We have 2 existing solar farms that are co-located with cattle ranches. Anything can be a solar farm. A housing subdivision can all be done with flat roofs to maximize solar output. Every mall, every government building, every school. The economics today are such that any place you can put a solar panel, you're saving money. You're cutting your cost of power and you're displacing coal and oil. So if LGUs can plan to try and put solar panel anywhere they can, it helps their local community. It makes it cleaner. It gives you more power during the day, which is when our towns and cities need it.
Great. Thank you, Seth. Next is Quintin. One sentence or a quick parting word?
Yeah, thanks, Sui. I mean, this is a wonderful ecosystem to work with. You've got large investors, baseload providers, last mile delivery solutions, investors, and then the most importantly, the technology is available, ready, and it's getting cheaper every year. So as Seth mentioned, it's just a question of being able to deploy that with the right fit for purpose in a certain area. And as someone who's doing it in communities, we're really appreciative of the support of the DOE. We want more of that so we can invest more. And at the end of the day, it takes all hands and all this entire ecosystem to make it work for the Philippines and the region. So thank you.
Thank you, Quintin. Getting the ecosystem to work together. Great. Attorney Jay.
An integrated, efficient, and holistic approach to developing and constructing all energy systems will help us repower all cities. I think that's what we need. No? And it's not just the national government, it's also the local government. And the private sector will always be there. They're ready to build. We just need to work together.
Thank you, Attorney Jay. Thank you for keeping to almost one sentence. And I like what you said, all energy systems. That's a very good point. Tony.
I'll try and keep to one sentence, but it may be a bit long sentence.
Sure.
As we see, you need to encourage as much inward investment as possible. You need private investment to help plug the funding gap. We followed the law. We did everything that we were meant to, and we're still waiting to resolve that problem. We've got lots of money for you. So Department of Energy, Director Mylene, you know where I am. Let's talk, let's find a solution so that we can help deliver more capital to support Quintin, to support Sech, and to support the goals of the Department of Energy.
Thank you, Tony. And then finally, Philip.
So I guess I'm coming from the technical angle, and what's exciting for me is, together with those continuing cost reductions that we've seen on all these technologies, the technology just keeps improving and it can do more and do more exciting things. Mm-hmm. We're unlocking the ability to use water bodies for solar. We're unlocking the ability to use, micro scale solutions, whether it's tidal or wind, integrated together with other energy generation technologies to bring that supply closer to the users. I think for me, the key thing is to make sure we learn the lessons from the other projects, whether internationally or within the Philippines, to make sure that we're, doing the best projects we can at any given time.
Thank you. We're joined at the panel also by the chairman of Livable Cities Philippines. And I'd like to give him the last sentence. Sir Bill, are you off mute?
Thank you, Sui. I was just on mute. Well, first of all, I want to thank all the speakers, for giving such great insights and examples. I think it's important to see the examples because People seem to think that this is not a doable project, but I think the examples from all our speakers show that these are very real possibilities and real projects in the Philippines. And I especially like the idea of Tony, which is to encourage more capital to come in and to support the 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 thrust, the renewable energy thrust of Department of Energy. So my thanks to everybody, and I hope that our audience found it inspiring and found I guess, a set of examples which to emulate and replicate across the country. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Good examples, absolutely. Now we've come to the end of our Q&A panel, and I'd like to call on Ms. Leonina Morillo, the Head of Prosperity Programs of the British Embassy Manila. Ina, can you please give us our closing remarks for the webinar?
Thanks very much, Sui. I don't know how to close such a dynamic discussion, but I'll give it a try. So good afternoon, partners and colleagues from across the Philippines and our friends also in the UK who joined us in their various hats and capacities as public servants in departments and local government units, representatives of the private sector, and committed advocates for sustainability. I have learned so much listening to our panel this afternoon, and on behalf of the British Embassy in Manila, I'd like to extend our warm thanks to the Livable Cities team who enabled this discussion, headed by our longtime embassy friend, Bill Luz, Sui, who has very ably facilitated this dynamic dialogue, the rest of the hardworking team behind the scenes, Patrick Mitchen, Jonah, and of course, Cherry, who leads our growing Future Cities partnership between the UK and the Philippines. It is such a pleasure to be with you virtually, joining in this occasion as we take bold and tangible steps to pave our way to repowering cities for the future. As mentioned, I'm Ina. I'm head of the UK Prosperity Programs to the Philippines, which covers the UK's deepening partnership to support the country in the social and economic development front. I hope each one of you and your loved ones, those who are joining us, who are dialing in from various areas here in the country, are well and safe in this continued challenging time. COVID has indeed brought our attention to global challenges that require urgency and action, a clear glide path towards effective solution and robust local action. This holds true not just for the immediate COVID health response and recovery, but also in enacting concrete steps to boldly forge the needed shifts in mindsets and behavior, creating a wider consciousness towards a more sustainable future for all of us. It is not just literally repowering our cities, but also empowering catalysts and key movers to make this transition to renewable energy happen. This lab comes at such an opportune juncture in our global effort towards climate action, as the UK currently hosts COP26 in Glasgow. Given that energy is one of the major contributors of carbon emissions, one of the key goals in COP26 is to undertake ambitious emission reduction targets to reach net zero by 2050 in order to keep the 1.5-degree target alive. The path from promises to action that benefits an ordinary citizen spells the difference in our political will. Repowering cities of the future means that the transition to renewable and sustainable energy should not remain a faraway ambition, but a clear and present reality for all of us. Cities have the unique opportunity to act as champions, as they are closest to meet the immediate needs on the ground, to create that ecosystem that promotes sustainability even after the pledges and climate talks. And more importantly, to recognize the impacts of climate change in actual and often heartbreaking circumstances, especially to us here in the Philippines, where vulnerable members of our society face the full brunt of the consequences of climate inaction. Every effort from each one of us attuned to meet this urgency, whether these are in small practical steps outlined in most of this afternoon's presentations, to creating a coalition to expand our influence within public and private sector spheres and create sustainable models. All of these make the difference. The UK government has been a proud and steadfast partner of the Philippines in its effort through our multi-year prosperity programs, which cover a wide range of holistic development in business environment reform, financial services, health, education, sustainable infrastructure, and promoting low-carbon economy. Our partnership with the Philippines and ASEAN has grown from strength to strength over the years. In fact, this year we celebrate 75 years of diplomatic relations, and we are excited about future prospects of the UK as ASEAN's newest dialogue partner. And on this end, our program partnerships, which Bill is very much aware of, has helped deepen our shared commitment to social inclusion and sustainability in tangible and inspiring ways. As Ambassador Bofis has shared earlier, some of the meaningful collaborations include the creation of the Philippine Sustainable Finance Roadmap through our ASEAN Low Carbon Energy Program that Secretary Dominguez has recently shared as a key document in his speech during COP26 leaders meeting. Our Global Future Cities program has sprawled to look at sustainable metrics guided by the SDGs, urban resilience and community and housing and settlement planning, and an inclusive planning platform to design infrastructure and green spaces that work for our communities. Finally, given the commitment of the Philippine government and private sector organizations of all types and sizes to engage in and contribute to the national climate goals and green economic recovery, we are pleased to see the very productive exchange of experience and expertise today between UK and Philippine experts. It's often these inspiring conversations on challenges and possibilities that help us know that there are more of us out there who would like to enable change. We hope that the LGUs and business communities who have generously joined us to learn more about realities and opportunities through the presentations and discussions have found useful elements for their city-specific sustainability plans. Thank you again to our generous resource panel who became my favorite professors this afternoon, Director Myrene, Quintin, Setch, Attorney Jay, Tony, and Phil. We look forward to seeing everyone again in our next webinar session, which will cover the topic of sustainable transportation. And more widely, we are very eager to continue working hand in hand with the Philippine government, the private sector, civil society, and individuals who day in, day out, go out of their way to make a difference in our shared home. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Ina. And as you rightly mentioned, all of these make a difference. So thank you. And congratulations to us for 75 years of diplomatic relations. So thank you for that. And as we close our webinar today, I'd like to also invite you to our next lab, which will be on Wednesday, November 24. It's about healthy cities. So where we will discuss the importance of vaccines, its benefits, and what are the misconceptions about it, and as well as the different strategies towards immunity. Before we close, I invite you to please answer the event evaluation form. For those in Zoom, the form will appear in your screen when you exit Zoom. But on Facebook, the form can be accessed through this QR code that you will see on screen. So just snap a photo of the QR code and it will take you to the survey form. For those who need a certificate of participation, you just answer the corresponding question in the survey and you can get your certificate of participation. And finally, I'd like to again recognize our partners for this webinar. They are on screen right now. The Livable Cities Challenge, the British Embassy, Manila, maraming salamat sa inyo, and also to our new British Ambassador to the Philippines. And together with the League of Cities of the Philippines and naturally our longtime partner, Globe Telecom. So with that, I wish you all again a very well and healthy afternoon this Wednesday. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And especially to the panelists. Great insight.
Yes. Thank you for
Really good.
Yeah, ang galing. Especially as you said, Sir Bill, the examples are quite
Yeah.
quite nice.
Very concrete. Very concrete.